Hello, everyone. I am so pleased that I finally made time again to reintroduce Conversations That Matter with Dr. M after it is an assignment that was laid in my spirit a while ago, and I have just allowed all sorts of excuses and reasons not to record. And I'm trusting that going forward, I will remain obedient and I will just jump on and make a recording as and when the Spirit leads. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that has really been placed in my heart, following, or forced rather, for me to talk about, following an unfortunate incident that my children and I have been exposed to quite recently. Yes, it's one of the topics that I address when I'm given an opportunity to talk to people individually, but also to talk to people in the corporate space, specifically around the psychological or psychosocial well-being of employees in a work environment. And I realize that this is not only something that affects people in the work environment in terms of your holistic well-being, but it affects people also in terms of our personal lives. And the topic that I'm talking about is maintaining boundaries, setting and maintaining boundaries. Boundaries are important. They are there to protect us from a psychological point. They're there to protect your psychological well-being. They're there to protect your emotional well-being. They are there to help you control what to allow in your space, what to allow in your territory, and what you don't allow in your territory. In the same way as every house has boundaries which are meant to protect you, and you determine who you are letting into your space and who you don't let into your space. Psychological boundaries are also for that purpose, for you to determine what you are allowing into your space and what you are not allowing into a space. And many a times, because we are social beings and we are relational as people, we tend to ignore the importance of setting boundaries at the detriment of our own psychological, emotional, and mental well-being. So I want to encourage you and say there's nothing wrong with setting boundaries. Boundaries are there to protect you. There's nothing wrong with setting boundaries. Boundaries are there to help you with your own self-care. Because if you don't set boundaries, you are likely to impact the very same body that you rely on, in terms of you earning an income or protecting your livelihood. Many people tend to work extensive long hours because they live in fear, because they are anxious that if I don't put on all these hours, then what's going to happen to me in terms of my work. But you also always need to remember that as you are affecting or pushing your body so hard because you have not set boundaries, you are running the risk that you would not be able to work in any way. You would not be able to sustain that living in any way. So psychologically, boundaries are important. It's not about being selfish, but it's about protecting yourself, and it's about caring for yourself. From a spiritual point, boundaries are important because they also help you to protect your destiny. There are times where we allow people to step into our space and we share certain things with them, or they observe certain things in our lives. And unfortunately, some people come into your space to steal. So, and I'm going to use again the analogy of boundary walls. So when you have boundary walls and you relax your boundary walls and you allow people into your space by sharing things with people that you think you can trust, or people that you think have your interest at heart, some people would snatch your opportunities and actually snatch things that are destined for you. Unfortunately, yes, your destiny is meant for you. No one can take away your purpose. They can copy your purpose, but they can never take away your purpose. So what I'm trying to say is be aware of who you are allowing into your space. Be aware of who you are having what conversations with. Because as you're having conversations, some people really take your ideas as a blueprint, and they end up running with them. Going back to why boundaries are important, as I said, they are meant to protect you. We find that whether be in our households or in our work environments, we've got different types of people. There are people that naturally, just by their being, just by their character, have got the integrity to respect boundaries. They have respect as a value. But then don't assume that because your personal value is respect, everyone else will respect you and will respect your boundaries. And hence it's important for you to communicate your boundaries. People need to know what your boundaries are. People need to know what are the things that are acceptable for you and what are the things that are not acceptable for you. Secondly, when you have communicated your boundaries, you need to maintain your boundaries, because like boundary walls, if they are not maintained, they are likely to break. And when something is broken, it's even much more difficult for it to be fixed. So very important that you maintain your boundaries consistently. Sometimes you have to continuously reinforce and send the same message over and over again until people understand. And do not get me wrong, I am not by implication or any chance implying that we should not be flexible as people. There are times where you might want to relax your boundaries, but also as you do that, be mindful of the unintended consequences of the decision that you are making around relaxing your boundaries. So as long as when you relax your boundaries, you are intentional, you are mindful, you are aware, and you know how you are going to sustain the decisions that you are making. Thirdly, always remember that setting boundaries is not about you being selfish, but it's about you caring for yourself. As I had indicated, from a spiritual point, you protect not only your destiny, but you protect the legacy of the generations that are yet to come. Because remember, the Bible also teaches us that the enemy come to steal, but I come to give you life, and I come to give you life in abundance. So an enemy will not come into your space unless they are meant to steal. And sometimes because we relax our boundaries, we allow enemies to come into our space. And because you have allowed an enemy to come into your space, in a way, you had given the enemy permission to steal. I've had a very unfortunate situation that I've had to deal with. Not an easy thing to deal with, because it's a boundary that one had to honor. I had to honor and respect and reinforce my own boundaries in a relationship that might be socially perceived as a very close relationship. But I just also realized that unless I take a stand to set the boundary state and to reinforce my boundaries, this thing is going to perpetuate. And 100 years down the line, from a spiritual point, my kids, my grandchildren, my children's children might actually find themselves faced with the same situation. So I'm not just talking about this thing from a psychological point. I am talking about this thing both from a psychological impact that not having boundaries would have on you physiologically, emotionally, mentally, and socially, and to a certain extent financially, but I am not at liberty to really talk about financial matters because I'm not an expert in that regard. However, when we don't set boundaries, we set ourselves at risk for being abused. We set ourselves at risk for being disrespected. And unfortunately, when you allow certain things to happen, they will perpetuate, and it becomes a pattern that you have established over your life. From a spiritual point, when you don't set the right boundaries, you are allowing the enemy to steal your destiny. there's many conversations that we're going to have, and one of the conversations that I would love for us to have at some point is the issue of discerning the type of people that you have in your life. Because not everyone that is in your life is in your life for the right reason. They might initially be in your life for the right reason, but as they see the things that God has placed in your life, and how God is using you because you are honoring your purpose, they might actually not be the people that you need to be keeping in your life. And spiritual discernment is as important for your spiritual growth as it is for your holistic and psychosocial well-being. I hope that you have taken a thing or two out of this conversation. And just to recap, always remember, when you set boundaries, it's not about being selfish, but it's about protecting yourself. It's not about being selfish, but it's about caring for yourself. It's not about selfish, but it's about putting a stop on things that are not acceptable, because many people out there will take advantage of any situation, even if it means they commercialize your pain, because they can. They have no respect. They don't have respect for you. They don't have respect for your values. They don't have respect for your boundaries. So be careful that you do not relax your boundaries, and be careful to maintain and make sure that your boundaries and your boundary walls are always maintained and they are reinforced. Of course, always do everything with humility, always do everything with love, and be guided by the grace, the peace, and the joy of the one that is living in you.